Sister Maureen O'Brien is a Sister of Charity of Seton Hill. She serves as Vice President for Mission and Identity at Seton Hill University. Prior to her appointment as Vice President, she was Director of Campus Ministry. Sister Maureen has served as a music and religion teacher at the elementary and secondary levels in schools in the dioceses of Pittsburgh and Greensburg. She has also been a director of parish faith formation. She has been involved in vocation ministry as well as coordinator of ongoing formation for the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill. Sister Maureen received her bachelor degree in music from Seton Hill, an MA in theology from Aquinas Institute, and a certificate in spiritual theology from the Toronto School of Theology. Sister Maureen's topic for us today is Hazard Yet Forward, Forging a Future for Our Catholic Heritage.
I've been reminded of these past few days of a phrase that we often use: humans plan and God laughs. This human was planning a marvelous day on Duquesne campus, having energizing and exciting conversations with colleagues and archivists, but here I am. I now know that Bishop Zubik and I share one thing in common. We're both virtual. Through the miraculous marvels of technology, I am able to be with you today to share with you just a few ideas following Casey's very informative presentation. Before I begin, I'd like to share with you a story of when technology succeeded for Seton Hill. And I say this especially to Professor Resnick, who is from our cousin college, Seton Hall. At Seton Hill, a few years ago, we had an excellent student whom I learned lived just a few blocks within walking distance of Seton Hall. And one day I said to him, "Corey, what made you come to Seton Hill and not Seton Hall?" And he said, "Well, sister, this is how it happened. I Googled Seton Hall and Seton Hill came up." So sometimes technology does work to our advantage. As Casey pointed out, within the next 10 to 15 years, 80% of women religious communities in the United States will face a major merger, transition, or complete closure. That figure is rather daunting and perhaps frightening as religious communities of both men and women look to the future, particularly in regard to our institutions in healthcare and education. Now, as Sister Louise can testify, healthcare institutions have faced this crisis and have dealt with this in creative ways. And so as educational institutions, we can look to them as models as we face similar challenges regarding mission, Catholic identity, and sponsorship. Catholic colleges and universities, in fact, all Catholic institutions, along with Catholic archives, are standing together at the gates of a new era. The work that we do for the world, the church, and the institutions that we represent have many similarities. The position which I hold at Seton Hill, that of mission officer, is relatively new to academia. It first appeared in the 80s due to the declining number of members of the founding order on our campuses. Those sisters in the early days of our institutions were the living story. Just as an example, in the 1970s, there were 70 sisters serving in administration, on faculty and staff at Seton Hill. Today, there are 3 of us. I serve along with the provost, Sister Susan Yocum, and professor in art, Sister Mary K. Neff. In those early days, you captured the mission almost by osmosis. It was in the air that we breathed. It was all around us. The history of mission and identity at Seton Hill goes back to the late 90s and into the current century. Seton Hill University responded to the growing trend among Catholic colleges and universities with the appointment by President Joanne Boyle of Sister Lois Skolko, who was a part-time mission officer. Sister Lois appointed a mission effectiveness committee, and there was also a committee established and was chaired by a board member who was a Sister of Charity. In 2012, Dr. Mary Finger was inaugurated as the 10th president of Seton Hill. Mary made it clear that mission and identity would be a top priority throughout her administration. Under Sister Lois's leadership, she appointed a mission steering committee, and the mission committee, which was headed by a member of the board, became a standing committee of the board. Upon Sister Lois's retirement, Sister Vivian, who's with you today, was named the Vice President for Mission and Identity. And at her retirement, I became the Vice President with full-time status with campus ministry and service outreach reporting to the mission office. I share this information as an example of one small liberal arts university's attempt to preserve its mission and its Catholic identity. As we all know, the mission of a Catholic institution is rooted in the tradition and charism of the founding religious order. If we are to survive as a small Catholic liberal arts university, it's critical that each member of the university community know and articulate its history and its charism. The role of the archivist is essential as we learn and as we critique that history. I think I would ask the question, not can you afford it, but can you not afford to have an archivist as you attempt to preserve your Catholic identity and your history? Our identity is rooted not only in the charism of the founding order, but in the history of the church and its relationship to society. At Seton Hill, I sit on the President's Council and have the opportunity to provide input into every decision that's made at the institution and for the institution and for our students. It must be rooted in mission. Catholic social teaching and the Catholic intellectual tradition, which are the hallmarks of a Catholic institution of higher learning, are rooted in the history of the church and in the charism of the founders of the institution. So the mission officer, along with the archivist, work together to keep the gates of the institution not just open, but swinging through programs of information and formation for all of its constituency: students, administration, faculty, staff, board members, and alumni. We're charged, along with our lay colleagues, for developing programs of formation, which are multi-leveled, to prepare leaders who will live and teach the mission as members of the founding order are replaced by their lay colleagues. Our lay colleagues will refound the institution in this time and in this place in history. As Sisters of Charity, we think back to the legacy of St. Vincent de Paul, who rooted his ministry, the ministry of the Congregation of the Mission, the Daughters of Charity, the Ladies of Charity, in the needs of the French society. To Elizabeth Seton, who founded the Catholic school system and responded to a need in her culture and her time. To Mother Aloysia Lowe, the foundress of the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill, the youngest branch of the Federation. Those early sisters saw the need to educate women, to educate children, to care for orphans, to care for the poor. Now, as our programs develop, our programs of formation, the archivist, as I said, plays a significant role in preserving the identity of our institution. I'd like to share with you some of the many ways that our former archivist at Seton Hill, Bill Black, and the Casey and Sister Louise have collaborated in events and in programs that have been presented at Seton Hill. And now we'll share our PowerPoint. So one of the many ways that we took advantage of the knowledge and the expertise of the archivist was in 2018 when we celebrated our centennial as an institution. The archivist worked together along with personnel in the institution to create a centennial wall 100 years forward. These are portions of the wall. If you notice, underneath the history of the institution, we have events that were taking place in world history so that our students especially can connect what was going on at Seton Hill, what was going on in the world. So that sense of history is so important. And that's the appreciation and sense of history, I think, is what the archivist helps to bring to an institution of higher learning. Our archivists also assist in creating exhibits. This particular exhibit is one which focused on Sister Francesca Brownlee, who was the first academic dean at Seton Hill and made tremendous contributions to Seton Hill College, then college, and who was principally responsible, I think, for getting our charter to be a college back in 1918. This is a picture of her family visiting Seton Hill when the exhibit was opened for our community. These are Sister Francesca's handwritten notes. Now, without an archivist and without people sensitive to the value of archives, this would have been lost. It's a treasure. This is another exhibit which focused on our foundress, Elizabeth Seton. Again, Casey and Sister Louise, along with Bill Black, created a beautiful exhibit to help all of us to understand the legacy of Elizabeth Seton and the legacy of the Sisters of Charity. This is part of the exhibit that they created. Note the early habit on the right. Another program which we sponsor at Seton Hill is a program called Lunch with Liz. And it provides an opportunity for our students to learn more about our history and about our legacy. This particular Lunch with Liz focused on the relationship of the Sisters of Charity with the Sisters of the Holy Family in New Orleans. And that's really a significant part of our history. The sister whom you see there at the center is Sister Sylvia Thibodeau. Sister Sylvia graduated from Seton Hill. She's a tremendous, phenomenal leader in religious congregations, especially in her own, has established a community of sisters of color. So that was a wonderful opportunity for our students to learn more about that relationship. That's a picture of some of our students in the early habit, and the bishop, I believe that's Bishop O'Connor, Sister Louise and Casey can correct me. And this is just an example. At this event, Lunch with Liz, sisters attend, the sisters from our retirement home come back, students, faculty. It's a wonderful way to teach our history in a creative way. So that's just an example of some of the ways in which we collaborate with our archivists to enhance the mission and identity of Seton Hill. But I don't think we can underrate the work of archivists in the educational enterprise of a Catholic college or university. The archivists help us to teach the history, which is a significant part of our education in a liberal arts university. Casey and Sister Louise have been invaluable to us in helping our students to understand not only our history as a congregation, but the history of the university and the history of the church. Our students have had the opportunity to work as interns in both the archives at Seton Hill and the archives of the Sisters of Charity. One young woman pursued a master's degree in archival study as a result of her work in both the Seton Hill archives and the Sister of Charity archives. At Seton Hill, we're just developing a task force, which we call truth finding. You know, today, young people are really desperate to know the truth. They hear so many varying opinions, ideas, suggestions. How do they come to an understanding of what is true? And I think, again, the archivist, and I'm so happy that Casey is going to be working more closely at Seton Hill, but the archivist helps us to come to the truth and to the integrity of history. And so once again, we can't afford not to have them. I am often attracted to a quote by St. John Henry Newman. And that quote is, "To live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often." We're on the brink of a major change in our institutions and in our church, which will have an effect on the whole world. I think that what our community, the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill, and Seton Hill University have done to collaborate as that change takes place can be a model for religious communities which have a close relationship to the institutions of higher learning which they have founded. I know that our archives will always be in good hands through the many changes that we as a religious community will face. The archives have always been important to us. They weren't always stored in the most attractive of places. Many times archivists find themselves off in some corner working alone, but their work is invaluable. And I think more and more we have come to appreciate and to understand how critical their work is to the life of the church. And so I thank you for this virtual meeting. It has been my pleasure to see some of the participants there in the audience. And I hope that we have an opportunity to meet face to face very soon. Thank you all so much.